Today's Tuesday. Okay, good morning, everybody. You're the man. Okay. Just there was a little piece of Gemara that we missed. Just want to go back a drop on Lamed Vav Amud Beis. The art scroll is the 36. It's 36b, 36b2, where the Gemara says, Omar Rafam Bapapa, the Mishnah speaks about the size of an etrog, right? We say there's a minimum size of an etrog, either the size of an egg or the size of a walnut. That's the minimum size of an etrog. So the Gemara says, Omar Rafam Bapapa, Machlokas Kan, the same way there's a machlokas over here, the size of an etrog, Kach machlokas, so there's a machlokas regarding avonim mikruzolos, regarding sharp stones that a person would use when he would use the bathroom to clean himself. The Tanya, we learned in a brisa. The Shabbos, gimel avonim mikrulozos, 3 sharp stones. Mutal hachnis besakise. You're allowed to bring these stones into the bathroom with him, and the Gemara says, the Kameshurim, what's the size of these stones? Rameya says, Rameya Ke'egos, the size of the stone is the size of a walnut, and the other Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kebeitzer, Yehuda says the sign of an egg. Now, this machlokas of the size of a stone, we're going to discuss this in a minute, has nothing to do with the machlokas of the size of an etrog. It's just that, you remember, they used to learn by heart. So they wanted, when you have similar rulings, you want to list them together so it's easy to remember. It's the same opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, who says the sign of an egg by etrog, he's the same opinion when it comes to the stone, when it comes to cleaning oneself. And the other opinion, Rameyu, said sign of walnut of an etrog, he's the same opinion over here. But they're not connected. It's not the reasoning of each one is independent of the other one. But the only point they wanted to state it is for memory purposes. That's why they lined it up. You can remember the law applies in both cases. Now, what's the issue on Shabbat? A stone is generally muktzah, right? A stone is something that we don't use. A stone doesn't have real use. But a person needs a stone to clean himself was something it was a little sharp, and they would use that stone to clean oneself. The rabbis, in order for kavod habriot, the honor of a person, they relaxed their rabbinic prohibition of using of a stone being muktzah in order for to help the person be able to use that in order to clean oneself. And the question is, what is the size of that stone that's appropriate to use for cleaning oneself? And so one opinion says it has to be the size of a walnut is appropriate. If it's too big, if it's the size of an egg, it wouldn't be good. The size of an egg would not be a proper size. And the other opinion says no. The size of an egg is the appropriate size. And Rashi explains the issue here is all about muktzah. Rashi says, and we're talking about, let's say you're in this field, Rashi says, and the field has no walls. It's not surrounded by walls. It's not mukaf mechitzos. It's not a private area, because if it would have partitions around it, that would make it a private property. Talking about an area which is more, now it's not a public domain on a Torah level, because it's not a public place where people are walking, with 600,000 people walking. This is more in a field that's not surrounded with walls, and they allow you to take this stone, as long as you're not carrying it 4 amot. You're not carrying it the amount that 4 amot is the general biblical prohibition of carrying on Torah. in a public property, you can't carry 4 amot or 6 to 8 feet in public property. And there are rabbinic laws on rabbinic decrees on property that's not Torah public property, but they make zerot on this type of property. If you would carry it 4 amot in this property, you might come to carry it 4 amot in a real public property. So since this is open area, it's open territory, there's no walls. So this type of property would be rabbinically prohibited to carry. And here what they eased up on was not the issue of carrying. They would not allow you, according to Rashi, to carry 6 to 8 feet in this area. Rather, you're allowed to carry only within 6 to 8 feet, less than 4 amot. And the thing that we're relaxing here, we're relaxing the prohibition of muksa, the prohibition of handling, moving certain items that were not prepared before Shabbat. And they for that, the rabbis eased it in order to sort of recover habriyot, in order to help allow the people to go to use this item to clean oneself. So that's the issue over here that the Gemara is referring to. So that was that point I wanted to just share with everybody. Okay, so that's the. Now we're continuing the Gemara. We are now on 36. We are on 36 B, 36 B, B3, 36 B3. What we said yesterday. Good morning, Ralph. 36 B3. We said yesterday that Rava said that you could even use. The question is of tying the lulav. You know, Rav Yehuda is of the opinion you must tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav, right? You can't just have the hadassim and the aravot loose. You know, hold the lulav, and you have hadassim and aravot not tied to the lulav. Correct, Mr. Haber? He holds the Rav Yehuda holds you have to tie it together, and because he holds, and also he holds that since you have to tie it together, he says you cannot tie it with a golden you can't tie it with a golden fibers. You would have to tie it with something that are from the 4 species, something from the lulav itself, which that's the custom today. We use from the lulav itself to tie the hadassim and the aravot. But he's of the opinion you have to tie it with the. You could use a hadassim myrtle twig branch to tie. You can use a willow branch to tie, but you cannot use a golden fiber to tie or other substance other than the 4 minim, other than the 4 species, to tie the lulav, the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav. That's his opinion, and we said in the Gemara yesterday, because if you can have a 5th item, right, Ralph, then it's like adding to the mitzvah. Because you're taking a 5th item. And if we hold that technically you do not need to tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav. You can hold it. Torah says, take a lulav, take an etrog. You can hold it together without tying it. But right. And the etrog could be even if you have to pick up the etrog separately. Big etrog, it's also good. Right. Exactly. Good morning, Jaime.
Morning.
Okay, we are on 36 B3. So. But we said yesterday, just to continue in the Gemara, Rava went on record and he said that when Rabbi Yehuda said you tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav, and you need to tie it from the species of the hadassim and the aravot or the lulav. He says you have to tie only with its own kind. You can't use some other foreign substance besides the 4 species to tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav. Now comes we're in the Gemara. Amar Rava, the Gemara on 36 big 3. Amar Rava, so Rava said, Afilu b'siv, afilu b'ikr dedikul. Rava says that when Rabbi Yehuda says you could tie it with its own kind, you could even use the ivy of the palm tree. You could even use the strips of the bark from the trunk of the palm tree. They're also considered um, appropriate to use. And Rashi explains, meaning it's not an idea of beauty. I mean, these items, you take the ivy to tie the dasim and ravot to the lulav, or you take strips of the bark from the trunk of the tree. It's not going to beautify. It's not going to. You're not going to win the contest of making it the most beautiful. It's the idea is that you can't use a foreign substance to tie the lulav and dasim and ravot. So therefore, this is called its own kind. Even the ivy from the tree, from the palm tree. And now the Gemara, V'amar Rava might, and we said V'amar Rava might time Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason for Rabbi Yehuda that he requires that you have to tie it from its own kind? Because Kusava lulav sarach eged, lulav you have to tie. If you bring a fifth item, if you do anything but the four species, then it's considered you're adding to the mitzvah. We spoke about the idea. The Torah says you're not allowed to diminish from a mitzvah. You're not allowed to add to the mitzvah. The Torah says I want you to take four species. A lulav, etrog, adasarov. You can't take an apple as well. You're taking five. You can't take three instead of four. So therefore he holds. Therefore, the same way you can't take an apple, but in addition to the other four, you can't go ahead and use. And if you use other material, he holds that's also called an addition, and therefore you can't use any other material. How do I know that the sieve? How do I know that the ivory of the palm tree and the strips of the bark from the trunk of the palm tree is also considered mina de lulavahu? How do I know that we could count that as part of the lulav family? Meaning it's a little bit distant from the lulav. There's the palm branch. That's the lulav. I can understand. You take a leaf of the lulav and you use it to tie. That's called part of the lulav species. But to say that the ivy that grows around the tree, or to say that the strips of the bark from the trunk of the tree is also called part of that family. Welcome back, Max. That's a chidush. That's a novel idea. And, Rabbi doesn't just say a law without having basis, without having a source, right? So Rava now feels the necessity to explain his source for what he just said. So that's what the Gemara says. The Tanya, we looked in the Breita. Besuko Teishvu, so we just said, Max, just to bring Max up to date, Rabbi Yehuda requires you to tie the hadassim and the aravo to the lulav, and you only could tie it with something that's part of the four species. Something you could take from the twig from the lulav, a leaf from the lulav. You could use the myrtle branch. You could use the willow branch. You can't use golden fibers to tie the hadassim and the aravo. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. And it comes Rava and he says, you know what? Even though he's limiting the things that you could use, you can't use other items but the four species. But within the four species, we can even count the strips of the bark from the trunk of the tree as part of the four species. We can even count the ivy that grows around the tree, the lulav tree, as part of the four species. Now the Gemara wants to prove, where does he get this from? Where does he get this novel idea that that's also called part of the four species? If you would tell me what's called part of the four species, I would say leaves from the lulav, the myrtle branch, the willow branch. But to tell me that this is also called for the four species, that's what he has to prove. The Tanya. We learned in a Breita. But Sukkot, we're now on 36b3 on the bottom, first column. The Tanya. But Sukkot Teishvu, right? The Torah says you're supposed to dwell in a sukkah for 7 days. The Torah does not identify what is the material that you use for this covering, for the schach, right? The Torah says, the word sukkah has to do with the schach, the covering, the protection. Now, what could you use? So the Torah does not identify the type of schach, but so he says, what does it mean? Sukkah shekol davar. You could use schach that's made from any type of material. Now, so Tosfos points out that what does it mean? Any type of material that grew from the ground, that's not mekabel tuma. Like those are the basic criteria You have to, in order to use for schach, you can't use something that does not grow from the ground. It has to have originally grown from the ground, being detached from the ground, and not mekabel tuma, and not receive contamination, which could be bamboo sticks or other types of things, other branches that were detached. But that's what you can use for schach. That's Divrei Rav Meir. That's the opinion of Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, you know what? In Sukkah Heget El B'Dal Amina Shebelulav. The only thing you could use as schach is only from the 4 species that are in the lulav. So that's what Tosfos says. That meaning 4 species of lulav. You want to use schach? You could use myrtle branches. You could use willow branches. You can't use bamboo. Right? It's not myrtle. It's not willow. It's not from those. A lot of Ashkenazis use bamboo. They call it bamboo sticks, right? Where is that? Where does that grow from? What kind of plant is that, at Max? You know, bamboo tree, right? It's not lulav. It's not a palm tree. It's right. It's not a willow tree. It's not a rubber tree, and it's not from the etrog tree. Yeah, you can use any material for the walls. The walls don't have very few halachot regarding the certain height of the walls, width of the walls, but there's no the material could be anything for the walls. You could use iron for the walls, right? Yeah, we spoke about there's different. We have to see, the halacha, but it's in now. So here's where Tosfos says he does not, Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of the drasha that says you just have to use from the drasha the Gemara brings before from the waste products of your granary, the waste product of your winery, right? That would refer to the all those things that are the waste products of your granary and your winery, pieces of the vine those type of things. He holds no, it has to be you can't use it from the vine. It has to be only material from the 4 species. But he agrees it cannot be something that's mekabel tumah. Can't be something that receives contamination. So Rabbi Yehuda says it has to be from the 4 species of the lulav. And now the Gemara says v'adin noten, and he has a kal v'chomer. Where does he get this from? And he says he has a kal v'chomer that teaches us this halacha. Uma lulav she'inoig v'leilot k'biyamim. Lulav does not apply at night like by day, right? The law of lulav, the Torah says, it says b'yom harishon, l'kavchem b'yom harishon, b'yom v'lo b'layla. The law of lulav is by day. You cannot fill the mitzvah of lulav by night. If a guy for some reason did not take a lulav, was in the army, and he was at war, and he couldn't take the lulav. I mean, the war was after after Sukkot, so to speak, after taking the mitzvah of lulav. But if a person can't take lulav by day, you can't. There's no mitzvah at night. There's no mitzvah of lulav at night. It's specifically by day. Ma lulav she'inogam b'lev k'biyamim. Lulav does not apply at night like by day. It only applies by day. So it's not as strong. It's not the strength of the mitzvah. It's a little weak in that sense that it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply in both times. And yet, but to fulfill the mitzvah of lulav, it's very specific. It's very strict about what you need to use to fulfill the mitzvah of lulav. You can't say, you know what, I don't have the hadassim. I'm going to substitute the hadassim with some cinnamon. The Torah, in the one hand, the Torah wasn't so strong. The Torah said you only have to do this mitzvah by day. Doesn't apply. This law is limited. Doesn't apply by night. So we're being lenient. We're saying we're not being strict on you. We're not applying. We're not creating this law by night. But yet we're being very strict and saying, but the fulfillment of this mitzvah, you have to be the way you do this mitzvah is you have to go ahead and get the 4 species in order for you to. We're being very specific, being very strict on you and how you have to go ahead and fulfill the mitzvah. So Sukkah, sheneheget b'leilot k'biyamim. sukkah that applies by night and by day. The mitzvah of sukkah, living in a sukkah, eating in a sukkah, is by day and by night. The Torah is very strong regarding this mitzvah. You got to do it by day. You got to do it by night. All 7 days of the holiday, you got to go ahead and take the lulav. They have to go ahead and eat in the sukkah, sleep in the sukkah. Eino din shalotei be'arba minim. The Torah was strict about the lulav, about eating in a sukkah and living in the sukkah. So the Torah must probably, if it's strict, so it's going to be also strict about the performance of the mitzvah. If it has to be only very specific type of material that you can fulfill the mitzvah. The same way, if the Torah was strict about the lulav, that it has to be only in these 4 species. So the sukkah, which the Torah is more strict about, the Torah obligates the obligation of sukkah in more places, both by day and by night. So certainly, the Torah will be strict only if you used one of those 4 species to cover the sukkah. So so the rabbis disagreed with this kavachomer. If you're making a kavachomer, you're opening up, you want to say this is strict, and because this is strict, we should learn out another strictness from it, right? That's the idea of the kavachomer. What's the idea of a kavachomer? If you have something which is generally weak, something is weaker than the other thing, and the weaker item has a stringency, so the stronger item definitely has a stringency. But if you're gonna be teaching us that the stronger item has a leniency, that's not a kavachomer. And here you're going to bring out a leniency. What's a leniency? Look at the Gemara now in Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph 37a. Lo motza arba min. What happens if a guy does not have, for the sukkah? You're telling me you must use hadassim aravot, lulav material to cover the sukkah. But lo motza arba min, and that's what you want to say from the kavachomer. But lo motza arba minim. What about if the guy did not find? He has not enough materials from the lulav family, from the palm family, from the willow family. Lo matzah minim yoshev batel. What's gonna happen? He's gonna sit and do nothing. He's not gonna sit in the sukkah. He's gonna miss out. What's gonna happen as a result of that? Your kavachomer. It's gonna happen that he's gonna miss out in the mitzvah of sukkah. Because since you're being very specific on the material that he has to use for sukkah, and you're telling me he must use the material. Now, without your kavachomer, we would say the Torah says you have to make a sukkah. We would not have limited. We would not have said you can't use bamboo. We would not have said that. Now you knocked out the bamboo. You knocked out all the other materials except from the 4 species. And as a result of that, a big leniency is going to happen that the performance of the mitzvah will not take place. And the Torah says, sit in a sukkah. The Torah didn't say, a specific all from the 4 species, and you're going to go ahead and you're making a kavachomer, which will come out to bring out this leniency. And you know what? We have a pasuk in Ezra, Sefer Ezra. Omer, a pasuk says, that the heads of the family said to the people, the heads of the family said, go out, go to the mountain, and bring branches from the mountain that grow by the mountains. Ale zayis, bring olive branches. Ale shemen, bring from the olive trees, or ale shemen is the type of, the commentary says over here, the type of cedar that certain oils come out from it, and it's a different type of leaf they're telling them to bring from, because one is actually olive, one is more cedar. Vale hadas, bring from the myrtle branches. Vale tamarim, palm branches, palm leaves. Ale eitz avos. Eitz avot is also myrtle, but eitz avot is what we use for the hadassim, where they grow 3 by 3 on the same section. And in contrast to hadassim, the myrtle branch that doesn't grow 3, right? We have 3 that comes out of each line to bring from those. And you know what? La'asot sukkot kakatuv, and go ahead and make sukkot. So what did the heads of the families tell the people? They gave them many options, and they wanted to make it easy for the family. So you know what? You have many materials to use to make the sukkah. And the Gemara's understanding, when you say to make sukkot, we're talking about the schach. So, and what did he tell them? He told them you could use other things besides palm, besides myrtle, besides the four species he identified from the olives, multiple, ale zayis, ale shemen. So, so we see that it's not specific to the four species. According to Rabbi Huda, the only material you could use for schach is from the four species. And we have clearly a pasuk in Ezra that says you can use other materials for the four species. But the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda Sava, Yehuda holds, he understood when the heads of the families told the people to go pick the stuff when all these materials were not only for the schach. Some of these were for schach, and some were for the walls, as Ralph said. The walls are not limited in law. You could use any material for the walls of the sukkah, as long as the walls are sturdy. The wind is not gonna blow the walls. Walls will, have too much movement. We spoke about that movement in the walls that will invalidate it. That's not a wall if it's moving around too much, right? There's too much if there's movement in the wall. These other species that are besides the four species, meaning from the olive family or from the cedar family, ale zayis, ale shemen, these are what? He says, these are hani litfanos. These are for the walls. And ale hadas, ale tmorim, ale etzavot, but the leaves for the hadassim and the tmorim, for the four species from the myrtle and from the palm, that's the schach. That's used for schach. But when in Sefer Ezra, when he told them to take from the other materials, like when he told them to take, he said ale zayis. Yeah, the olives. Olives have nothing to do with the four species. So that was not for schach. It was more right with that, right, exactly. So therefore it's not a refutation of Yehuda's opinion. But the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda Sava, Rabbi Yehuda holds, Hani, okay, one second. Now, Utnan, and we learned in a Mishnah, Mesachim bin Asarim. There's a whole discussion in the Mishnah. You could use boards for your schach. This is Rabbi Yehuda. It means Rabbi Yehuda says, now we're going to see there's different sizes of boards. There's one opinion in the Gemara that says that everybody agrees you can't use a board that's 4 tvachim. That's, let's say, around 4 tvachim. It could be like 16-inch boards. You can't use such size boards because they're more similar to a ceiling of a house. You can't use such wide boards. But there's a machlokes between, boards between 3 and 4 tvachim. A board that's less than 4 tvachim. There is a discussion in the Gemara whether you could use such a board, because one opinion in the Gemara is that minority of people, good morning, David, minority of people use it for their ceiling of a house. So is it really concerned that if you use that board for your ceiling of your sukkah, people will go ahead and use it for, think that you can also live in your house. You have to make sure you can't use the ceiling of your house for a sukkah. And the rabbis were concerned if you use certain type of ceiling material for your sukkah, you'll make a mistake, and you'll say, for the same way I could use this material I'll be using large boards for my schach, for my cover of my sukkah. I might come to use I said, what's the difference between these boards and the boards of my house, right? And we know the Torah said you can't use your ceiling, that's your house that's made for permanent residence, can't be used for schach. You have to use your covering for the sukkah, has to be made, not something that's made for permanent, you made like for your house. So the Gemara said, Rabbi Yehuda says, Mesachim bin Asarim. You could go in and use boards for your schach. Okay, the Gemara will discuss what the size. We're talking about a certain size of boards. Now, it can't be too big. Well, let's say between 3 and 4 tefachim boards. And boards, what do you make the boards from? The boards are obviously made from the trunk of a tree. And Rabbi Yehuda, we also established, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion was the only type of material, the only type of family of materials you could use for your schach, he limited to 4 materials. You could only use schach made from the etrog tree, the myrtle tree, the myrtle, the willow, and the palm. You can't use any other material. You can't use the bamboo. You can't use hay. You can't use any other branches from any other tree. We don't hold that one. We say you could use branches that you cut, right? Not that they're attached to the ground. You got to cut it before the holiday. You could use branches. Doesn't have to be specifically from those four families. But Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that you have to use only, he holds you only could use from those 4 materials for your schach. He really limits the ability of what you could use for your schach. But he says you could use the boards. You could use boards for your schach. So those boards, again, it's a certain size board. Those boards are actually from the trunk. So we see that when he says, even though he's very limiting in what materials you could use, but he still allows you to use the bark from the bark of the tree, the trunk of the tree, bark from the trunk of the tree is also allowed to be used. Meaning he's not just saying use the branches, the leaves of the palm. You can even take from the trunk of the tree, cut off a slice of you get that axe, cut off a slice of the trunk of the tree, and that's also considered using the 4 species. He's not limiting it to a very specific part of the 4 species. He will even allow the ivy that grows around the trunk of the tree to also allow you to use that if it goes around the palm tree. So that's the Gemara's proof. The Gemara's proof is, since we just said, this is Rava's reason, that's how Rava's proving his point. Rava came on record and he says, you know what? Yes, Rabbi Yehuda, good morning. Yes, Rabbi Yehuda was limiting what materials you could use for your schach. But you know what? He's going to allow you to use even the trunk of that tree that he allows. There's 4 trees that he allows, even four types of species, from the 4 minim, the etrog, the dasim, the ravot, but he's going to allow you to use not only actual leaves from the actual lulav leaves, take lulav and throw lulav, make your sukkah, your schach from lulav, or make your schach from the myrtle branches, take myrtle branches and use that as hadassim, as schach, as you cover. You can even use the trunk of the tree and cut a piece out. That's also called using the 4 species for your schach. And where's the proof? This is the proof. Because the proof is, he says you could use these boards. These boards are obviously made from the trunk of the tree. How do you make boards? Where do you make boards from? And therefore, Alma, the Gemara says, the sieve, ikredidikla, mina lavu, that the sieve, that the ivy of the tree, and the bark of the tree is also part of the species of the lulav, and that's what you could use for schach as well. Shma mina. So the Gemara said, okay, you told me that. You're telling me Rabbi Yehuda says you only could use 4. And again, we don't hold this opinion, but we're trying to understand Rabbi Yehuda. You only could use from the Hadassim family, from the Aravot family, from the Lulav family, and you only could use from those materials for your schach. Good morning. What do you mean? We have a Tanya, we have a Braita. We have a Braita, Succah b'nesam shel eres. If you made the ceiling of the Sukkah, meaning the schach, you use boards made out of erez. Erez is cedar, right? So the Gemara is understanding the cedar wood, the cedar tree that's not hadassim. It's not a myrtle tree. It's a cedar tree. It's a different tree. It's not myrtle. Are you with me, David? It's not myrtle. It's not willow. It's not lulav. It's cedar. And yet, Rabbi Yehuda says you could use that as material. how can we have a contradiction? One place we say Rabbi Yehuda said you only can use 4 species, only 4 items, 4 types of materials for your schach. And here we say you have another material, you have cedar. That's the Gemara's question. So it says the following: if you make boards out of the cedar, and it's cedar wood, and it's if the board is too wide, you made a nice sized board out of those materials. It looks too much like your roof of your house. Therefore, everybody holds you can't use that as schach. Because if you're going to make these nice long boards, 4 tefachim wide boards, let's say 16-inch boards, and you place them as your sukkah roof, that's what we use for our ceiling of our house. People will think, if that's what I use for the schach, for my sukkah, maybe I can also sit in my house also for the holiday. So therefore, maybe I can't sit under empty space in my house, but under a board of 4 tefachim, I could sit. Therefore, the rabbi said you gotta make even if you made it for the specific purpose of a sukkah, if you made the board 16 inches, 4 tvachim, let's say, we'll call it 16 inches, you cannot use that. You can't use that sukkah. Where are they arguing? But if it's not 4 tvachim, if it's smaller boards, let's say between 3 and 4 tefach boards, let's say between 12 and 16-inch boards, so that's not the common board of a house. So therefore, but are we concerned that people will interchange that for the board of a house? So there's an argument. One says, don't have to worry. You made it for a sukkah. It's not the common board of a house. You're good. You see, Rameya posel. Rameya says, no, he's more strict. If you said it's fine, you could use it. Rameya holds, Shem yesh, Meinesa v'nesa kumali nesa. Rameya holds, let's say you have a space between each of these boards. So these boards are invalid. But if you have an empty space between each of these boards, let's say you have the way we explained last time back in the Gemara when we learned it. Let's say you have 4 tvachim of a board, no good, invalid schach. Then you have 4 tvachim empty space, 4 tvachim kosher. So you have 4 tvachim, 4 on the board, no good, empty space. Fill in that empty space. The way they used to do it is like this: 4 tvachim board, 4 tvachim empty space, 4 tvachim board, then 4 tvachim empty space, and then you would run it in a way that you have 2 spaces of empty space, 4 tvachim, and you would go in and you would fill the empty space with kosher schach. So even though at the ends of the sukkah, this is not kosher schach here, and this is not kosher schach here, but if in the middle you have 2 sections of 4 tvachim of kosher schach, that will equal 8 tvachim of kosher schach. And the fact that the schach is not more than a certain distance from the walls of the sukkah, we have certain laws that we can look at as if the wall extends, and you have a kosher sukkah. So it's a separate point. The Rameya says, as long as you have in the middle of the sukkah, not so far from the walls, 8 tvachim of kosher schach, you're good. He says you go ahead and he admits that you would be good if you do it that way. Now, so what do we see? And that would be good. But we see from here that they use erez. Rabbi Yehuda said you could use cedar as your schach. But the Gemara answers, erez does not necessarily mean, erez could refer to Hadass. The Hadass family, the Myrtle family could also be referred to as erez, even though we generally refer to erez as cedar, but it could refer to myrtle, and therefore he's not allowing anything but the 4 species. And therefore, it's no contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda still maintains his opinion is the only thing you use for schach is from the families of the 4 species that you use for the lulav. You can't use anything else. Even though you found him went on record, you can use cedar. The word cedar over there refers to the word erez that was used there is not referring to the common translation of cedar. It's referring to myrtle. And we'll see tomorrow to continue in this point. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you for joining, Jaime. Thank you, everybody. I mean, it's best that rain should be able to come through, right? We do say that.